Have you noticed food costs have risen lately? Have you been to a local department store and have seen fewer items than normal on the shelves? Have you noticed the price of certain goods has gone up? Many North Americans are bracing for what could be a very challenging fall and winter as the impacts of COVID restrictions, shipping and trucking labor shortages, and shipping container shortages impact our global supply chains. According to a recent report from the American Trucking Association, the industry was already short by more than 60,000 workers pre-COVID. And now that shortage could jump to over 160,000 by 2028. Costco recently told investors on an earnings call that they are capping purchases on toilet paper, paper towels, and water due to shortages. That's right, capping toilet paper purchases. Remember, we thought those days were behind us? Well, I guess they're back. But perhaps some of the biggest impacts will be felt in the agriculture sector. The COVID-19 pandemic led to more robust safety measures and the closing of facilities and borders, which has, of course, affected every section of the chain from the farm to your table. Other factors, such as higher transportation and fuel costs, have increased prices. Fires and droughts across the Northern Hemisphere have also affected the supply of crops, resulting in higher prices for animal feed. For example, the feed price for chickens is up about 20%. Again, this directly impacts you, the consumer. Statistics Canada reported in August that a 500-gram package of bacon, on average, had finally crossed the $8 threshold for the first time. And beef is also up at least 12%, with some cuts up 30%. And were you aware that 10,000 U.S. John Deere workers went on strike recently, and this has farmers worried about being able to plant and harvest their crops? And if there is less supply to meet the demand, then the price of crops will surge. The Ontario government and the government of Canada is trying to help by investing up to $3 million to help Ontario food, beverage, and other agriculture food businesses improve their productivity of their operations. But will this be enough? Will the rising cost of agriculture cripple Canadian farmers and consumers? Well, joining me now to share his thoughts on the matter is Gerry Ritz, former Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food for Canada and a former Saskatchewan farmer himself. Gerry, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Okay, so how are farmers coping with these increased costs?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of anxiety, especially where I am. We had a huge drought that covered a good chunk of the area, just didn't get the rain when we needed it. They still did take a crop off, but of course the costs of the inputs, the costs of taking the crop off are still all there, regardless of whether you got 40 bushel or 20 bushel. So at the end, there's a lot of anxiety as to how this is going to all play out. The farm safety nets, the business risk management programs they're called, are there, but in a situation that this wide and this dire, they're not going to be enough.
Okay, but how does this compare to previous years when we've also faced droughts or fires? I remember recently, I think it was a year or two ago, 2 years ago, we referred to it as the harvest from hell. How does this year's concerns with the cost of agriculture compare to previous years?
Far more widespread than we've seen in a long time. I mean, these things have happened before. They are cyclical, but at the end of the day, this is far more widespread. The timing of the rains that we got just weren't there to help, the crops fill. There was hailstorms and so on like that. Seemed to, actually, the Great White Combine was probably a blessing in this year if you had the right kind of insurance coverage. But it's unfortunate that it takes a crisis level before governments of the day or even consumers start to realize that their basic food inputs are at risk here.
So what, yes, you could say that COVID has made people realize, because of course headlines are dominated now. We're going to have a supply chain crisis, or we might have a food crisis. Inflation's going to go up. And people are noticing, those prices creep up. But, most people go about their day. They don't think about farming unless you're a farmer yourself. Have farmers been forecasting something like this for a while?
Well, I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but some of this is to turn the page away from COVID that is not going well either. So they need different headlines, different ways to move this thing forward. Farmers buy groceries the same as everybody else. Not everybody has their own beef to butcher or pork, or they don't grind their own flour to make bread that often. So farmers are consumers as well, and they see those costs going up.